We'll talk later. Scott invited me to speak today, and when he asks me to do something, I pretty much do it. So here I am. When I speak to organizations, I like to do some research on them, and all of the things you've already heard. The fact that the organization is almost 50 years old is so remarkable when you look at this whole sector. So many places that are to be of service to those of us in recovery, they for all kinds of reasons, don't make it. So the thousands of teens that Rise Recovery has helped, and the stability of the organization, which a lot of you are responsible for. And the fact that it is a peer-based model. And I know myself in working with teens and young adults that my being in recovery has been the bridge. It's certainly not me being on TikTok or knowing how to dance. So that's an important bridge. So I'm Susan Packard. I'm an alcoholic. I'm 11 and a half years sober. And my, thank you. And my practice is 12-step recovery, but I am respectful of any practice that gets one to recovery. And because recovery is how I found hope, I thought I would talk a little bit about hope this morning with each of you. So let's see if we can forward slides. Oh, don't go there yet. Okay, that's a surprise. So hope is a common word. You know, we use hope all the time. I hope the weather's good for my vacation. I hope Caitlin passes her math test. For me yesterday, I hope this plane lands, I don't die, and I can talk about hope to this group. So it's a common word. And, you know, for our four-legged friends, hope is a very simple thing. So this is Dart and Diva, my girls, Bill and my girls. And for them, hope is any time Bill or I stand up. Because it means food or playtime, or if you have dogs walking, or maybe if you have cats walking them, I don't know. But so it's a very simple thing for our four-legged friends. I wish it was as simple for us. You know, hope is also an emotion. Not just a word, but also an emotion. And I used to think that love was the most powerful emotion that we had in our arsenal as human beings. But now, having lived through some hard things, which we all have, but for me, addiction, now I wonder if it's not hope. Because if you don't have hope for what your life can become, for the promise of your life, it's really hard to find the energy to connect with anyone and to love. So, I don't know, but I think if they were in a horse race, hope would win by a nose. So in the early day, I was on the ground floor of a number of cable programming networks that are now streaming networks. You know, all the technology has evolved. But in the early days of HGTV, we had a promotion that was steeped in hope. If you can imagine it, you can do it. Take a look. We need audio. There it is. can imagine it, you can do it. So sometimes people ask me, well, whose idea was HGTV? And it was this guy, Ken Lowe. And I was his first hire, so I was employee number, well, I say 1, he says 2. We fanned out and hired a group of people to build the business. And I sometimes include this slide when I speak just to remind myself never to get that haircut again. Okay, so the 4 most powerful words that I've ever heard to describe hope. I have a dream. What are your dreams right now? I hope you all have them, there's that word, because they are a quality, a gift of being human. So hope is a word, it's an emotion, and it's also an action word. Like believing you can battle something and beat it. Now, how many of you have had COVID? Most of the room. And you're here. You battled it and you beat it. Or battling addiction and believing you can beat that. And it is beyond tragic when we lose someone to addiction. And it may be that some of you in this room likely have lost loved ones. And there are no words for that sorrow. So, how does a teen, a young adult, or a middle-aged adult find hope when you have substance use disorders? Well, my personal belief is that this disease is a disease of disconnectedness. We feel utterly alone. It's not rational, but it's real. And I can tell you that because happily married, raising a fun young son, monster awesome job, felt utterly alone. Not rational, but real. But I also believe this. I believe that belonging is our deepest longing. And belonging to our families, belonging to our communities, belonging to our church organizations. If you're in recovery, belonging to your recovery community where you sit in meetings and you listen to other people and you think to yourself, I think to myself, my story's messed up, but so's yours. I am you, and you are me. And I sit in those meetings, and I still go to many meetings a week. It's a pleasure to go to those meetings. And I sit there and I think to myself, what would the world look like if everyone believed I am you and you are me? I know it wouldn't look the way it looks today, that much I do know. So when I wrote my second book, Fully Human, a leadership book, I talked about this idea of seeing ourselves in others, standing on common ground with others. And as a leader, I often got the question, are you standing with me? Not in those words, but, do you have my back? And that's a fair question to ask anyone, a manager, a leader, anyone you're in relationship with. Are you standing with me? And I can tell you in recovery, I have thousands of people who stand with me. It's going from feeling utterly alone to that feeling, it's indescribable. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about hope as an emotion. I've now written 3 books about emotions. Hopefully I know a little bit about them, but on any given day, my own emotions can be somewhat unpredictable. But what are emotions? It comes from the Latin for movement. So emotions are energy. And you can feel elated, on top of the world, with so much energy. And you can feel this way, which you do in active addiction, so weighed down, like you're carrying a backpack full of rocks. Now, one thing I've learned is that our breath is our friend and can help us to manage our emotions. So everyone right now, take a deep breath. Don't y'all feel a little calmer? Scott's over there going, no. Scott, you need more than breath work. I'm going to have to work with you. Okay. What I do today is I teach these 2, mindfulness and I call them my M&Ms, mindfulness and meditation, because they help us to manage our emotions, and which is a big deal when you're in recovery, when you have substance use disorder. And they're actually proven therapy for trauma. So if you don't know anything about either of those, you might want to look them up. And our emotions impact all 3 parts of us: our bodies that hold them, our brains that create them, and our hearts that open and close to them. And for our health, our overall health, we need to care for all of these parts of us. And in fact, the World Health Organization defines sustainable health as physical, mental, and social well-being. There's the 3 parts: body, mind, heart. Well, there's mental health. No one ever wants to talk about that one. It's just one of 3 parts of us. But our culture, no one wants to talk about our mental health. Happy to talk about, the Kardashians' mental health or lack thereof, or Britney Spears' mental health, but not our own. Well, here's a surprising little statistics, ladies and gentlemen. 83% of us will have a mental health disorder in our lifetime. Anxiety, depression, PTSD, SUDS, something. Now, we may not deal with it, but it's there. We have it. And if you don't deal with it, and this is the miracle of Rise Recovery, working with teens and helping them with this self-awareness. Because if you don't deal with it, one of 3 things is going to happen, maybe all 3. You'll either shut it all out and get sick. You'll shut out, you'll lash out in anger or rage, or you'll numb out. And I was good at 1 and 3. This is another, I just read this a month ago. 48 million of us over the ages of 12 have a substance use disorder. That's a big number. And Avita's terrific op-ed, in that op-ed, she reported that here in Bexar County, which I thought was Bexar County, but I heard, no, it's not, don't pronounce it Bexar County, it's Bexar County, that the average age of first use is 12 and a half. So once again, bravo, Rise Recovery. Okay, so I write this book. I felt I needed to understand a little bit more about how our brains work, those of us with substance use disorders. And if those of you in the room who have them, this might be of interest. So the brain science hadn't caught up until 20 or 30 years ago to what's going on when you have SUDS. But now we know more. What everyone used to believe, even the clinicians used to believe, is that you ingest a drug or alcohol, and it impacts your frontal lobe which is all about, that's where executive function is, all about the choices you make. And so therefore, if you're in addiction, you're either selfish or weak because you can't make good choices. But now we know more. And now what we understand about what happens is if you have this disorder, when you ingest drugs and alcohol, they hijack your frontal lobe, land in your midbrain, which is all about survival in the next 15 seconds. And so the more you ingest them, the more it feels like your very survival depends on that next drug or drink, and not so much food or shelter. So we know more today, which is wonderful. And the teens and young adults that I work with know these things. And so they're turning the page. All of you students here in Rise Recovery, turning the page and writing a new story of your life, a story that's rich with hope, because recovery is so rich with hope. So, my belief, I think everyone in this room, we are all in recovery from something. Might not be SUDS, might be a trauma that never healed, might be a fight you had with your spouse or child the night before. We are all blessed and we are all wounded and fully human. Okay, so why did I write this book? And my publisher, who'd published my first 2 books, said, Susan, what are you doing? This isn't your audience, it's young adults, it's not a leadership book. But it is. If you've met the students I've met, who, when all around them, there's drinking and drugging and partying, and they choose to experience college sober, that courage, that resiliency, that individuality, those are exemplary leadership traits. So every one of you students in recovery, you are a future leader of ours. So I wanted to support them. And how it happened was I was asked to be Grand Marshal at Michigan State in the fall of 2019. And I was walking campus with a friend, Lisa, who knows I'm in long-term recovery, and she said, you want to go over to the CRC and visit the students? And I looked at her and I said, what's a CRC? And she said, oh, that's our collegiate recovery community. That's where our students go to, if they've got a lounge and they could, okay, great. And I was incredibly inspired. And so I started collecting stories, and they're from all over the country. Here in Texas, there's a story from a young man from Texas Tech. And by the way, Texas Tech is the premier program for collegiate recovery in this country. I was lucky enough last year to tour some of the Texas universities and was blown away by the resources and hundreds of students that are part of that community. University of Texas, Austin, has a terrific program also. I went to Texas A&M, they're starting one up. So you have Texas offers a lot to students who want to go to college and stay sober. So wanted to support growing these collegiate recovery communities because only 5% of colleges have them. We have a lot of work to do. Want to help to destigmatize mental health and also break the cycle that happens in colleges. So we know this from SAMHSA data, that from freshman year to senior year, over twice as many students will qualify to meet the definition of alcohol use disorder. So if a few students picked up this book and read the stories of their peers, who knows? Okay, in closing, who are our hope heroes? Well, certainly Avita and all for staff and the work that they do. Katina, Frank, the students here, and all of you, because you're here supporting Rise Recovery. You're all our hope heroes. You know, as one of my things I had to do as Grand Marshal, I was asked to give remarks at a VIP alumni lunch. And I walked in, you know, everybody's in their green and white, it's game day, homecoming, game day, you know, everybody's excited. And I said, I was excited too, and I hope our football team wins, and they can be our heroes today. But then I said, but did you know there are other heroes in this university? And I told them I'd visited the students at the CRC the day before. I said, did you know we had a CRC? Did you know that there were students who choose to attend college and stay sober? Did you know we had Dawn Kepler, who's the staff person, and works with our students every day on academic goals and recovery goals and life goals? Yeah, I hope we win, and I'm excited, and that'd be great. We did win, but barely. I hope we win, but these students, Dawn Kepler, they're the quiet heroes of this university. At which point the room turned pretty silent. Yeah, I really know how to motivate a crowd on game day. But maybe they learned something. So, you know, I think we get to a place in our lives, and I think you all agree because you're here, where our work includes inspiring hope. And I tell the students I work with, you're never too young or too old to do this. If you see a new student come into your recovery community and they're struggling and they're frightened and they feel alone, offer them hope because you found yours. Remind them endlessly that they are made good because you found your goodness. You know,